That should be good. I'll just hit recording as well because we'll share it on YouTube for the other members who can't join. But let's start in like another minute, and then you can take it from there.
Yeah, for sure.
And just like, while we wait for people like those who are here, can you guys let me know, like just do a quick overview of where everybody is from in terms of freshman, sophomore, senior. So I guess, Rohan, what about you?
I'm a freshman.
Freshman. Atharva?
I'm a freshman too.
Jacob?
Freshman as well.
Cool. Gavin?
I'm a freshman.
Bryce?
I'm a sophomore.
Sophomore. Zach?
I'm a freshman.
Nice. And Jay?
Hi, I'm a sophomore.
Cool. All right, we got freshman, sophomore. That's great, guys.
Guys, if you want to just mark yourself present, that would be great right now. And Sherjan, do you want to like, stop in the middle and like kind of answer, any questions that they might have, or you want to have like some time towards the end of the presentation, like 5-10 minutes for them to like kind of.
Yes, I have a schedule here. I'll keep it pretty real time. So as people have questions, I'll take breaks now and then, answer them, and then at the end we'll leave 10-15 minutes and open it up. But we'll keep it pretty candid. It'll be fun.
Okay.
All right, Tanish, why don't we start? I think this is a good place to start.
Yeah. Okay. So hi everyone. I'm Tanish, as you might all know me, and today, as promised, we have a very special guest with us, Sherjan. And as you know, he has worked. He's founder of Sherjan.com, and he has mentored over 20,000 students. And before this, he was the vice president of an investment bank, Morgan Stanley, and he has also worked with associate as a Google Capital. So yeah, I would like to hand it over to you. Take it here from here, Sherjan.
Well, thanks.
So I'll just stop sharing my screen here.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks much, guys. Thanks for joining. Elizabeth, welcome as well. So my name is Sherjan. I'm the founder of this school, or this online coaching business. It sounds weird to name the business after your name, but my hope is hopefully this survives after me. And just like we call Deloitte and McKinsey and Morgan Stanley, which are other people's names, my school can hopefully survive after that and people can learn from it. But guys, I want today's conversation to be as candid and natural as possible. I don't want you guys to think that I'm some VP or coming from some big company. I was in your shoes at, a few years ago, maybe like, 14, 15 years ago. And I think it's great that, someone who are, freshman or someone who is a sophomore is looking into their career seriously. I remember when I was a freshman, the first job I had was still working at a chicken restaurant. So I didn't have access to these kind of, super cool consulting events and banking events. So I think as much as you guys can learn from this, I think it'll be great. So I'm dialing in from Toronto. I'm sure you guys are in all different parts of the world. So today what we want to do is, I know you guys are focused on the consulting side of the industry. So what I want to do is I want to give you guys a quick background about myself, just to give you a quick story there. Then what I'll do is we'll get into the world of consulting and what consulting is. So, there's a lot of things you can find on YouTube and online about what consulting is, but I'm going to actually tell you what you do when you are a consultant. And it's not that complex, to be honest with you. It's just problem solving. So it sounds bigger than it is, but I think it'll be easy for you guys to understand when I simplify it a little bit. Then I'll focus on how you guys can prepare for breaking into that. And especially as you're a freshman or a sophomore, you have a lot of time on your side, which is an awesome thing. A lot of people get into these industries or try to get into these industries when they're juniors and seniors. And by that time, it's a little bit too late. And then finally, we'll open up for Q&A. So you guys can ask me questions that are on top of your mind and what you can do. So I'll give you a quick background about myself. I'm from Toronto originally. I studied engineering, wasn't a good engineer at all. I had a low GPA of 3.0. And that was pretty, annoying because getting into these industries like banking, consulting, accounting, even the big tech firms, you need to have a good GPA. And what that means is at least a GPA that's 3.5 or higher. And for me, it was a lot lower than that. So I had to, really struggle to break in. So I did a second degree after graduating. I graduated in 2009, which was, during the recession. Couldn't get a job into what I wanted to do, which was investment banking back then. But anyways, tried my best, got into UCLA in their master's program, which gave me a second chance to network and meet people who are from these different industries and learn from them. So I spent the next year at this master's degree at UCLA trying to learn from folks who are in the investment banking world and just get access to the network, and also improve myself, build my brand, build my resume, build the network and build, my knowledge base of getting into these industries. And most importantly, learning how to interview and learning how to break in. So that led me into my first job, which was at a smaller investment bank called Houlihan Lokey, which is in Los Angeles. I covered M&A there as an analyst. But then at the same time, I was not satisfied. I mean, I was grateful. I mean, it's always good to be grateful for whatever you get, but you should always be pushing forward and always trying to get something better or do something better with your life. And I wanted to work in a better or bigger investment banking firm. So through networking, again, reaching out to the right people and just cold emailing again and again, late nights all the time, I got into Morgan Stanley. So I worked at Morgan Stanley's investment banking team as an analyst in Menlo Park. Menlo Park is in California. That's where the tech investment banking team sits. So all the big tech companies that you guys hear about, from Google, Facebooks to the world.
Like, yeah, whatever.
I think we are, guys, if you have your microphones on, let me know. We can pause that. So then I can focus on this. So then I joined Morgan Stanley, worked there for 2 years. And after that, I joined Google. So a lot of times when you join investment banks or consulting firms or accounting firms, you'll usually stay there for 2 years, and then you'll move on to something else. Some people go into business schools. Some people go into other industries like private equity and venture capital. Some people actually go into industry. So they'll go into join some of their clients that they've worked with. So a lot of people don't really stay after 2 years, even though you work so hard, the last 3-4 years to get into these industries. But most people actually leave the banking, consulting, accounting industries after a couple of years. And there's a lot of different reasons for that I can cover in a bit. So anyways, I left as well. I joined Google. I was on their growth equity arm. Growth equity basically is their investment arm, kind of like a venture capital arm. And my goal was my job was to invest in companies broadly across, the tech spectrum. But my focus area that I loved focusing on was Asia. So I focused a lot of deals in China, India, broader Asia from Singapore to Korea. And that was kind of what I did for the next 2 years. After that, I actually rejoined Morgan Stanley again, this time moving to Hong Kong with Morgan Stanley and working in their private equity sector and covering that. And that was, in 2015. So then I got promoted to vice president, stayed at Morgan Stanley as a VP for a few months. And then I was like, you know what, enough is enough corporate. I want to start my own startup and go full time into the world of building your own thing. So then in 2017, I left Morgan Stanley, started my first software company, which was called Employ. I ran that for 2 years. It failed miserably, which is fine, part of the journey. And then now it's 2020. So in parallel to my professional career, I've been coaching students. So I started this business in 2010. We're actually approaching 10-year anniversary in November. And it's predominantly helping students, getting them motivated, getting them excited about a career in some of these competitive industries, and just training them how I broke in with my background. If I could do it, you guys can do it as well. So that's kind of the whole gist of this. I've taught 20,000 students in the last 10 years. And everybody who comes and learns from me or learns from my story and gets motivated, they all have their own incremental gains in their own life. Now, this doesn't mean you take my workshop and all of you will end up at McKinsey. This means that, you will incrementally do better in your own life. So anyways, that's kind of like my background. Hope that's helpful. So what I want to do next is I'll talk to you guys a little bit about what consulting is. I know both, most of you guys are freshmen and some of you are sophomore, but I'll kind of explain what consulting is and give you an overview of what that looks like and what the work looks like in a day-to-day life of a consultant. So the best way to explain this is this. Let's take a company like Apple, right? So Apple, everybody knows. Let's say Apple wants to open up a new store in Singapore, right? Or in Asia. Let's just say Asia in general. So when companies like that have these, big strategic moves that they want to do. Now, opening a single store in a new geography doesn't seem like a big move, but it actually requires a lot of work that needs to happen, right? Similarly, if let's just say Apple wants to move their manufacturing. So they manufacture iPhones in China, let's just say, and they want to move that manufacturing to a new factory in Vietnam, for example, or to a new factory in India. So these kind of large strategic moves that companies do, and these are companies like Apple, Coca-Cola, Walmart, Amazon, any of these companies, these kind of strategic moves require a lot of analysis, a lot of thinking. Like, is this a good idea? And when that's the case, what happens is you really need to figure out as a company internally, as Apple, how should we do it? So as Apple, obviously, you know your business the best. So you'll do your own research, you'll analyze the market and all that stuff. But ultimately, you are limited to how much data you have, how much access to the region you have, or how much access to that sector you have, because you've never been in that region, right? You don't know a lot of people in that region. You don't know a lot of players, and networks not built there. And you just don't know the laws, the regulations, and all that, other stuff that comes with it. So this is where Apple actually says, okay, you know what? We need someone else to come in who is an expert at this in this region, and get them to help us figure out if this is a good decision or a bad decision, right? And so decide on that. So Apple will then go out to McKinsey, Bain, BCG, any of the big, major consulting firms, and say, hey, look, we're thinking of expanding into Asia, right? And we'll just use the first example that I said, which is like, hey, we want to open up our first store in Asia, for example. And, we want you guys to advise us what's the right, strategy here, and how should we do it as well. So this is where, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, whatever, they'll, create a pitch, a presentation about why they think they're the best consulting firm to advise Apple on how to do that. And then they'll go create this pitch. So whatever that pitch is, it has a lot of analysis, research, why this makes sense, why it doesn't make sense, all that stuff. So once, let's just say McKinsey, for example, let's use McKinsey here, for example, wins this deal, right, wins this contract, Apple will then hire them as their consultant. Now, what usually then happens is McKinsey will take on this project, and there's going to be a deal team that's going to be put on this. Now, what a deal team is, you'll have a couple of junior people, you'll have some mid-level senior people, and then you'll have one or two really senior partners, right? So it's usually a pretty lean team, less than 10 people who are working on a specific project with a client. Now, when this project gets activated, what happens is, the junior team, senior team, middle team, whatever, the team at McKinsey, they will go and analyze the entire industry first. So that's the first part. They'll do a bunch of analysis and research. This means like talking to, people that are in the industry, figuring out, hey, who are the other players that are in the market there, figuring out what does it cost to build something like this, what would it cost to expand into this region, what are the legal requirements, what are the regulations, can Apple actually make money from its customers there, or do the people in the region, let's just Singapore, for example, are they even going to be interested in Apple opening a store there? Is there demand there? All that stuff. So all of that research, all that, desktop research, and going and actually interviewing potential customers, potential vendors, all that stuff is something McKinsey will handle, right? And McKinsey will do all of this stuff, and they'll create a presentation. And usually these presentations are pretty massive. They're not usually like 20, 30 pages. They're 300 pages, 500 pages long, and they have the entire deep dive of that region, right? And it has sections of, from all aspects, from resources to people to market to industry deep dive, all that stuff. And once that is done, and this report can take probably 3 months, maybe even 6 months sometimes, that report is then presented to Apple. And so McKinsey provides that report to Apple. So the team at Apple who is making this decision can look at that report and really figure out if this is a good decision or not, from a lot of different angles, from a business angle, from a financial angle, from a regulatory angle, from all sorts of different angles. And then that set of resources is something that Apple can use to decide on if this is a good move or if this is not a good move. So from my perspective, let's just say like when I was at Morgan Stanley, or even when I was at Google, we actually used McKinsey, Bain, and BCG many, many times, because we were a lot of times, like for example, we were trying to invest in India. We didn't know anything about the India market, right? As Google, we were new or trying to get into a brand new market. So we actually reached out to one of these consulting firms, and they built a report for us, this presentation. And that report basically had all the details about India, for example, like, what makes India great, what is the talent available there, what are some of the up and coming startups that are coming up in India, what are some of the main trends, like what types of companies work better in India and what don't, and what are some of the resources that Indian companies would require from someone like Google, all that stuff. So that kind of analysis is something that an expert from that region, a McKinsey, a Bain, a BCG, can provide better than us actually doing all that research on our own from scratch, right? The second piece is, as a client, so you say you're Google or you're Apple, you don't have the time to do all that research, because you're usually busy on your own job. Like I'm trying to figure out, for example, hey, what are the best companies and stuff, but I can't go do, interviews with customers, all that stuff. So based on all that, I need consultants to help me. So that is what consulting is. And the best way to kind of, summarize that, like what does a consultant do? A consultant just helps you solve a problem, right? That's what they do. Like they help you, figure out a strategy from both a business side and a financial side. And they provide you with the evidence that, hey, here's the research. So as you guys look into this career in a consulting world, just think about it this way. Do you enjoy solving new problems? Do you get excited when someone's like, hey, we got to figure out that thing, whatever that project is, and it's a sandbox. Let's go, let's do this. And if you get excited about things like that, new problems all the time, working on new projects all the time, real world projects that actually ultimately do happen, then consulting is a great place to start. You learn a lot of analysis, you learn a lot of business skills in terms of like talking to folks, talking to customers, talking to industry experts, and you become an expert in either certain verticals, like you could be an expert in technology or consumer, or you can become an expert in a region, right? So there's all sorts of different things. So that is what consulting at a high level is. Now, it's important because I saw some of the questions people asked me in the sign-up forms, like what is the difference between consulting and investment banking? The key difference here is once, let's just say Apple's decided that they want to open up the Singapore retail location or the Asia retail location. So let's just say McKinsey provided this report to Apple. Apple took that report in, analyzed it, and made a decision. Yes, we're going to do this strategy, and we're going to go into Asia. Now that they want to go into Asia, they decide that, hey, we're going to open up 10 different stores, right? So we're going to open up a store in Beijing, Shanghai, Singapore, Hong Kong, whatever else, like a bunch of different places. Now, Apple needs money to make this happen. So when any sort of financial stuff is involved, any sort of funding is involved, assets are required, that's where investment banks are really good at, right? What they'll do is they'll come in and they'll advise Apple and say, hey, listen, you guys probably need $500 million to make this happen over the next 5 years. And here's how we think we can structure that for you. Here's how we think we can get you the money from local investors. Here's how we think we can get you some debt so you can actually invest in this thing. Or here's how we think the future revenue projections will come in that you can take money from. Anything related to finance, that's where investment banks come in, and then they take that information and go from there. By the way, if you guys have any questions and stuff, you can always just put it in the Q&A in the bottom.
Yeah, we've been new.
Yeah, I think your microphone's on.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I'll just shame myself. There you go. All right, so any questions, just put it in the Q&A, and if you have additional questions, like private questions you want me to just answer without disclosing who asked it, you can just always put it in the chat. And also, if you're confident and you want to ask me directly, just raise your hand and I'll answer that directly. All right, so that's what consulting is. When you prepare for consulting, now, because the next thing that I want to talk about is like, what should you do today to prepare for this? So the first thing I want you guys to do, especially given the fact that you guys are freshmen and sophomore, you guys are brand new in the world of, your university or college. So you basically have a ton of things that you guys can go and explore. But before you go exploring, right, the first thing I want you guys to do as freshmen and or sophomore, as young people, is I want you guys to build your brand. So what that means is building brand basically means start by building your overall resume, right? A lot of you don't have a resume or a relevant enough resume. Maybe it is good enough, but it's from high school days. You don't have a lot of experience on it. So building a good resume is super important because that's what your brand is when you go send it to someone else. So when you think about meeting new people, right, which you're going to do in step 2, which I'll explain in a second, you will need to send them something, a snapshot of your life, right? And in these days, or historically as well, a resume is something that describes you and represents you when you're not there. So building your brand is super important, and it starts with building a beautiful resume. That's number 1. And I'll share some links with you guys that you guys can use to build that resume. Now, I know you guys won't have a lot of experience on it because you guys are still young, may not have a lot of internships or anything like that. That's totally fine. I just want you guys to start laying down the foundation of having a resume and overall, improving it as time goes by. Because the way you guys got to think about it is like, if you want to get into McKinsey or Goldman Sachs or Google, the most important internship you'll get is the internship you'll get in your junior year, right? So as freshman, sophomore, it's not as big of an issue because you're still, putting in the building blocks of your career. But junior year summer internship is super, super important. But to line up for that, you need to start today. So the first piece is build your brand, get a great resume. And I'll share this link with you guys that you guys can use to build your resume. So I'll put it in the chat. So this is a 90-minute class. It's a free course that I teach on building the perfect resume. So when you guys have time this weekend, take this and learn from it and actually build your resume. And it's not going to be perfect, like I said before, because you guys don't have a lot of experience, but this should help you at least get started. Number 2, what I want you guys to do is build your brand on an online basis as well. So that means you guys should have an amazing LinkedIn. You should have an amazing Twitter. You should have an amazing Facebook, Instagram, all profiles where someone can come and search you, right? Think about it this way as any other company would. Think about a brand like Nike, for example, right? When you see Nike, anywhere you see Nike, if you see Nike in Hong Kong or San Francisco or New York, Nike has the same brand across all avenues, right? From so online to offline to store to their website, wherever you see Nike, you will see the same brand. So I want you guys to start thinking that way about yourself. So I see someone like, for example, Jay or Jacob or Gavin, all of you guys need to become a brand over time. And the idea there is start by really thinking about how can I craft that story so that if someone searches me online, they see the same person across all avenues. So if you search me, for example, on Google, or you search me on Instagram, or you search me on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, you'll see the same Sherjan across the board. So this also means like, building that personality across the board. And I don't mean it from an aspect of professionalism, right? If let's just say you love snowboarding, you should have snowboarding as part of your brand across all platforms, right? If you are you love, for example, robotics or something that's interest of you, that should be across all platforms. So someone who sees you on LinkedIn should not get a very different image of who you are on Facebook. So start building that online brand, and that's the first part. The second piece, what I want you guys to do is explore, right? Now, what explore means is this. When you get into, university, sorry, Jake, you had a question? Oh, okay, sorry, I saw you raise your hand. Okay. The second piece is explore. As you guys explore, as you get into this new industry or new avenue, which is university, think about it this way. I want you guys to, take university as an ecosystem that allows you to, test a lot of different things, taste a lot of different flavors. And the example I give other students is, especially when you're young, is imagine yourself as an alien who just shows up to planet Earth, right? And you walk, the first stop you make is an ice cream store. And there's like 40 flavors in that ice cream store, and you don't know any of those flavors. Now, I know one of those flavors that you guys have heard of is consulting, right? And the other one that you've heard of is investment banking. That's all great. But remember, there's another 40 flavors that are out there. But when you're young, the best part is you can take, taste a little bit of every flavor and really figure out, which flavor do you like the most? Because your career is going to be 40 years long. And right now you're just in the beginning of your educational career, like the 4-year educational degree. So what I would recommend in terms of how you can go explore is start networking and meeting people, not just in the industry that you're really passionate about, let's just say it is consulting, but also other industries, right? And for you, as you guys have, alumni from a great school, Indiana University has alumni, every university has alumni, right? It's just how the business of education works. So you need to start reaching out through LinkedIn or the alumni directory or wherever you can find, even seniors in your own school, go and meet them. That should be a part of your regular approach. So every day you should reach out to someone who is above you or ahead of you in their career and ask them, what do they do? How do they like it? What do they not like? What do they love? All that stuff, regardless if it's consulting or not, right? And that will allow you to really figure out what actually is something that you're passionate about and what is something that you would want to try. So then this is the second piece, which is exploration and networking. So do your best, figure out how to get access to alumni directories, figure out how to get access to people who are from, Indiana University who have graduated, and start shooting them cold emails or reaching out to them and be like, hey, look, I just need 10 minutes of your time. We'd love to learn what you do. And we'd love to actually have, any sort of indication of what you love doing there and what do you not like doing there. Now, what this will allow you to do is allow you to figure out what you don't like. Right? If there's a job out there, for example, we just talked about consulting, and if you think that the stuff that I mentioned to you about what consulting is, if that sounds boring, then you shouldn't do it. Don't do something that other people are just chasing, and you don't want to just chase it blindly because someone else is doing it. So that's one of the first pieces of advice I would recommend. All right, so last piece I would say is because you're young, you have a lot of time. This means you have a lot of time to prepare and get amazing at interviews. Now, when you think about any interviews for these kind of jobs, there's two parts to it. There's one part, which is understanding the technical piece of the interview process. And then there's a larger part, I would say 90% of it, which is the behavioral piece of the interview process. Most people spend a lot of time learning the technicals, right? Most students that I've met, they spend too much time learning technical side of the interview process. So for example, for consulting, you will spend a lot of time learning case studies, right? And how to do case studies well. The issue with just focusing on technicals and putting more emphasis on the technical side of things is you can learn all the technicals you want. But if you suck at interviewing and if you're not good at convincing someone to hire you, all of that technical knowledge just goes to waste, right? If you're just good at technicals and not good at networking, you'll never get an interview. Even if you're good at technicals and you get an interview and you suck at interviewing, you won't get the job. And even if, let's just say, you somehow get the job, remember, they'll teach you how to do the technicals when you get that job and are in that job. So don't overemphasize on learning technicals. So don't spend like 90% of your time just practicing case studies over case studies. What I would recommend to you is the other 90% of the time. The other 90% of the interview process has to be focused on behavioral skills, soft skills, networking skills, all of that stuff. The whole idea about convincing someone to hire you is to convince another human to hire you based on your personality, right? Not because you can add two numbers or you can read a case in a better way. So just keep that in mind as you start approaching industries and interviews, and don't overemphasize just the technicals. So to prepare, when you do the technical preparation for consulting, one of the best books that I've heard about is Case in Point. So you guys can search it up on Google, Case in Point. It has a bunch of case studies that you guys can look into, and that should be good enough for you guys to get the gist of how to prepare for these cases. And I'll just pause there and just mention one thing. As you do case interviews, there's a lot of different ways to do case interviews. You can do 1,000 case interviews, but the basic idea of every case interview is this. Ultimately, what is a case? Case is a problem. It's just a complex word saying that, hey, in the consulting world, they say the word case, but technically speaking, it's just a problem. The same way how Apple had a problem, we want to open stores potentially in Asia. That's the problem they're trying to solve. So what a case study is, or solving a case, basically means solving a problem. So the one thing that I want you guys to understand is any case interview you'll get, and Case in Point does a great job of explaining all of this, but at a high level, what you want to do is you want to get as much information from that case before answering it. And there are no right answers to a case. Like, for example, if Apple wants to go to Asia and open a store, yes, some consulting firm can say yes to that. Some consulting firm can say no to that, right? There's no right answer to any case. That's just the general, information you should know. But the way consulting firms will, evaluate you and see if you're a good consultant or potentially a good consultant is how inquisitive you are. How many good questions do you ask during that case solving method to see if, how much information can you extract. So any case that you get or any case that you solve, anytime they ask you, so let's just say an interview might be like, hey, John, how many ping pong balls can you fit in a Boeing 747, right? That's one of the cases usually that comes up, let's just say. Now, the right answer might be 40 million ping pong balls, right? But that's the wrong answer. The perfect answer is the how you got to that ultimate number. So it's asking questions like, hey, how large is the 747? Are there chairs in there? How much space do we have? What is the size of a ping pong ball? Is there any other thing in here? Is the plane flying or is it on the ground because gravity can affect? All that stuff. Really figuring out all the assumptions that are part of that ultimate case is what you're trying to, get out of the interviewer. And once you get all of that, you can add it up and say, hey, based on all of my assumptions, I think we can fit 4 million ping pong balls in a Boeing 747. So don't try to get to the ultimate answer, the ultimate final number. The main part about any case that you solve is how do you get to all that, what are all the assumptions you put into that? And finally, I'll just mention is that if you guys are interested and you guys have time, the other part, which is the behavioral part, is you should, check out my course, which is called Breaking Through, and you guys can sign up to that here. The course is basically focused on the behavioral and the soft skills side. That's what I teach. I don't teach technicals. I primarily focus on that, and that course can help you train for that. All right, so I'm going to pause there. We're 30 minutes in. So what I want to do is I want to now open up the floor and help answer questions that people have. So, people have. So someone has a question. Shay, how are we able to fully explore by just merely asking individuals about us, what they do, like about their focus? What can we gain more access to soft skills? Okay, so soft skill piece. The best way I would say is to learn from my course. That's one avenue. The other way to learn just soft skills is just to get that confidence, right? So you need to get that confidence, and you'll have to become social. You'll have to meet people. So how I got confidence in for example, in my life is I joined as many clubs on campus as possible. So as you guys are, joining a university, go join as many clubs as possible. Go participate in presentations and public speaking events, and participate in extracurricular activities like join sports leagues and whatnot. All of that stuff will get your confidence out. And that's where you'll get, soft skills from a general life perspective. But if you want to learn specific soft skills from an aspect of interview perspective, then my course, in my opinion, will be the best. The other questions, Shay, you had was how are we able to fully explore by just merely asking individuals about what they do, about their area of focus? So I guess the way I think about it is this, right? So you've got to be open to networking and really be inquisitive, genuinely interested in what someone else does. So when you're a freshman or a sophomore and you connect with someone who's senior, be very curious about what is their day-to-day life like. So let's just say you meet someone at Bain who works in San Francisco. Ask her, like, hey, Jenny, so what does your day-to-day life look like, right? I mean, she's not going to say, no, I'm not going to tell you. She'll tell you exactly what it looks like. Now, the conversation isn't an hour long. These conversations are usually 10 minutes, 12 minutes, maximum 15 minutes long. But you have nothing to lose. All you're doing is reaching out, talking to them, and asking them what they do. Then you can meet someone who's a product manager at Airbnb, right? Ask him, what does he do? Then you can meet someone who maybe works at government, right? There's a lot of different avenues out there, but just blindly following because McKinsey seems like a cool brand or Goldman Sachs feels like a cool brand without knowing exactly what the job is, it's the worst thing to do. So especially as you're early in your career, try different flavors and go ask people, what do they do? What do they love? And what do they not love? Now you won't understand 90% of the game, but at least you'll get 10% of the game. And from your own personality, you can then make a judgment call about if that's something you'd be interested in. Like for me, like now, if someone asks me, hey, Sherjan, I have a new job for you and it's, doing Excel models all day, I don't want to work in something like that, right? I wouldn't choose that. But if I was, 10 years ago, if someone came up to me and be like, hey, you can be an analyst at Goldman Sachs and you'll be doing Excel financial analysis all day for 20 hours of the day, I would 100% be interested in it because that's the stage of life I was in. So really figure out what is something that you personally like. Start asking people questions. And when you have those conversations, you'll actually start figuring out what you don't like and what you like more. So Jacob, you asked me, have always been taught to ask questions to the employer after an interview. Any recommendation as to what questions to ask? Yeah, so look, I mean, when you have interviews with folks, people always give you some time to ask questions. The reason is not to, put you on the spot. The reason is to see, have you done some research on that group, on that, company, on that person as well. So the best questions are two types of questions. Number one is ask as many questions about the person and their experience, right? So let's say you meet, Stacy, who interviewed you. Always be like, hey, Stacy, you've had a great career here. Obviously, you've been in the firm for 5 years. We'd love to know, you must have had a lot of different opportunities. Why did you choose this, right? And people love talking about themselves, right? People love telling them, oh, this is what I did, this is what I did, all that stuff. So these kind of questions really help you extract as much information about someone's personal experience. Similarly, you can say, hey, Jenny, I saw that you worked in this other group before, and now you're working in this group. Why make the change? What was different about those things? Oh, hey, Jenny, a lot of people who join consulting go on and do MBA, but you haven't done an MBA. Why was that? Why was that the case? Do you think that MBA is necessary or not? So just getting the person to talk about their experiences is great. And obviously, anybody you interview, if you have an opportunity, do some research on them in advance on LinkedIn and whatnot. If you don't have that opportunity, no worries at all. Just make sure when you get to the interview in the beginning, they'll introduce yourself and they'll tell you about themselves. Just keep it in mind what they did. So in the beginning of the interview, they'll be like, hey, I'm Jenny. I've been a vice president at Morgan Stanley for 3 years. Before that, I was at Barclays, and before that, I was at Bain. Just keep that in your mind. And I went to school at Wharton, for example. Just keep that in your mind so that by the end of time you get to the Q&A part, you can mention that. So that's the first one. Ask people about their own experiences. The second one I would say is ask people about the role specifically. So you can be like, hey, John, consulting role sounds really interesting. Question for you is, how many projects is someone usually working on? And at the same time, the other question I have is, what industries do you guys mostly focus on? Is this industry specific or geographically, specific projects? Things like that are good questions to ask. Never ask about culture, never ask about salary, compensation, vacation, all those benefits. Just focus on the job. So that it shows you that you're really actually interested. You can even ask questions like, hey, John, how many people actually end up staying at the firm for longer than 2 years? I've heard a lot of consultants leave after 2 years. What has been the track record of the folks that you guys have hired, and have most people actually stayed, or have they gone to do other things? So stuff like that, I think, is the way I think you should tackle that. So Shivan asked, do we need? Okay, one second. Let me just answer this. So do we need to mention soft skills on our resume? No, don't need to mention soft skills. So check out the link that I've posted up. When you do that, when you go through my 90-minute class on resume building, I think you'll see what's required and what's not. So that should help you answer. Like I said, look, resume is the most important document in your life, guys. You have to maintain it, and it's a living document because you update it every 3 to 6 months because you get new experience. So it's a snapshot of your life for the last 5 years, and it'll show you the course that I've mentioned. It'll show you how to do that. how do international students usually fare in terms of employability and what can they do to stand out in the whole recruiting process? So look, I was an international student when I applied to jobs in the US. Being an international student is a lot harder than being a domestic student, especially based on whatever the government regulation, immigration regulations are of the region at that point in time. Now, having said that, I would not let any sort of bottlenecks come in your mind when you recruit. Don't think like, oh, I'm an international student, so it'll be harder for me, right? That's one thing people always think, that, hey, because I'm this, it'll be harder for me. Or for example, if you're a female, a lot of people are like, oh, hey, these industries are predominantly male, it'll be harder for me. Yes, it will be harder for all, people like that. Like I was, a brown kid who's older, a lot of the people that work in investment banks are usually white kids, for example, right? Historically speaking. But that shouldn't stop you from trying, right? So that's just my belief on that. I think you should definitely try. You should definitely do your best. Whatever the trends are, whatever the headwinds are, they will always be headwinds. But don't put them in your mind and self-eliminate yourself. Now, what I mean also by that is, as an international student or any student who you feel like you have some sort of bottleneck, the only way for you to improve around it or go around it is to work harder, network better, prepare better. Do everything that's in your control to do better in those interviews and getting access to those interviews. When people meet you and they see you and they'll love you for who you are. And then when they'll find out that, hey, by the way, this person's from China or India or Pakistan or wherever else, that's a secondary thing. Now, if they don't want to hire you because you're from there, that's a different reason, right? But that part won't come in until later. By the time someone says, hey, look, we really like this guy named Raj, and Raj was awesome, and he will crush it in this job. And then HR finds out that you're actually, don't have, any work permit, which was not going to be an issue with you guys because you guys will have OPT and stuff like that. So I wouldn't let those things bother you. Let the company handle all that stuff later on. Just focus on your own prep. Focus on what you can do. And one of the things I tell my students is you got to think of life and recruiting and all that stuff as a game of golf, right? In a game of golf, you just got to improve your own swing, right? Don't worry about someone else's game. Don't worry about anything else. Just focus on your own game. Crush your own game, get that ball in the hole, and you will win. So that's the whole idea behind how I approach recruiting, and I don't let these other things kind of bother me a little bit. So Rohan has his hand up. Rohan, you want to get on the mic?
Yeah, so I was just having a question about networking with people. Would you recommend talking to other students or people that are maybe graduated in a couple of years into their career?
So you're asking me, should you network with other students or some alumni?
Yeah, is there a preference between those two or just anybody?
I think for me, especially because, you're so early in your career, I would, spread a wider net, right? Obviously alumni will be the best because those guys would have resources to pull you in, get you interviews and all that stuff. But at the same time, recent or seniors in your school or juniors in your school, seniors actually, juniors might be a little bit less, but seniors in your school have gone through your shoes most recently, right? They would know the tactics, they would have resources, they would know exactly, who's the right person to chat with at that firm, all that good stuff. So I wouldn't, differentiate on one or the other. I would not give preference to one or the other. I would approach everybody. When I was at UCLA, I'll give you an example. I was a master's student and I was trying to break into investment banking. I would email everyone that I could find who had ever gone to UCLA and worked in investment banking. Literally, I would be like, hey, here's who I am. I'd love your help. I'd love for you to train me. I'd love to learn from you. I'd love to all that good stuff. And even, for example, I would email a bunch of Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley investment bankers in Korea and Tokyo and places where I don't even speak the language. And they would be laughing at me. They'd be like, this guy is reaching out to me. He must really want to work here. And they would call me and be like, hey, dude, there's no way you're going to work at Tokyo Goldman Sachs, but I got a buddy of mine you should talk to in New York, right? So things like that, they'll bridge you to the right person. So that's one thing from the alumni perspective. And then at the same time, when I was at UCLA, I was a master's student. I would still network with juniors at UCLA, right? Who are obviously younger than me, but not much younger, but younger than me. And I would be like, hey, man, you just got a Goldman Sachs internship this summer. Can you teach me how you did that? Because ultimately you did something that Goldman liked or some humans at Goldman liked, and teach me what that was. I want to learn that, right? So anybody and everybody can be a gold mine. And so don't discriminate against or put preference against, for or against someone. Just go and learn and network. And you'll be surprised, man. Give it 2 years. By the time you're a junior or a senior, you would literally know everybody. And it's a beautiful thing, because as career goes by, and 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, your network will be so massive that any deal you're working on or project you're working on, and the business world is small, by the way, guys. Even if you join McKinsey, don't think that you're not going to be working with someone at Goldman Sachs. You will be, right? Don't think you're not going to be working at Google sometimes. Like I've been in meetings and worked on projects with so many teams who've actually rejected me. Like I remember there was a project at work at Google when we were investing in this company, and the investment bank that was helping us was Goldman Sachs. And the MD on that project was the MD who had rejected me from Goldman Sachs, right? But there's no harm, no foul here. There's nothing. It's just business. But then the beautiful thing is, like, when you meet people and you interact with them, network with them, they know you on a personal human level. It just makes your future life a lot better. So I would be open to everybody. All right. So just going back to the questions. From my understanding, consultants are successful because of their experience and industry knowledge. With that being said, would you recommend working in the financial services industry or IB and doing consulting later in your career? Look, I mean, I think, both. I've seen successful people from both sides, bankers and consultants, right? I think the only way I can answer this, or you can answer this for yourself, is by meeting, 5 people in both, verticals. Go meet 5 to 10 people in investment banking. Go meet 5 to 10 people in consulting. Just learn about their career path, what they do, what the lifestyle's like, all that good stuff. And I think, you will, I learned a lot about the tech industry by being a tech investment banker, right? I know a lot about the tech. I don't need to work in tech consulting to learn about it. So if you're curious and inquisitive about an industry or vertical, you'll become an expert at it, right? You don't need to join consulting or IB or banking to do that. So, choosing one or the other is going to be a little bit harder. You don't see a lot of people go from consulting to banking, unless they do an MBA and pivot. And similarly, the other way around, from banking to consulting. But can they and should they be able to? Yes, because ultimately, what are these industries? These industries aren't hard to work in. Once you get the job, these are very simple industries. You do a bunch of research and you align a bunch of logos on PowerPoint and you add a bunch of numbers on Excel. That's basically what these industries are. So anybody should be able to do the job. But the problem is, these are very structured industries. You come in on ground floor and slowly move up the food chain. So the hard part is, once you choose one of the paths, it's a little bit harder to, navigate to another path unless you do an MBA. And even with me, I left Morgan Stanley, then joined again. That's a very rare thing. Most people don't do that. So I would just take this time that you guys have as you guys are in college to really try to figure out as much as you can about one of the industries. And look, if ultimately, let's just say you made a mistake and you joined McKinsey, and it's that's the best part. You'll have a summer internship ahead of you, right? And even if you join full time, don't worry, you're at McKinsey or you're at a good firm as consulting. So I wouldn't be too worried about that piece. As an engineering student, why did you decide to go into investment banking? So I was just a shitty engineer, man. I had a 3.0 GPA and I was doing aerospace engineering, and you didn't want me designing planes. They wouldn't go too far. And I saw investment bankers and consultants at my university who were from the business majors and stuff. And those were just, professions that I thought were much more cooler, much more interesting. The roles felt better. The smartest kids were going into those industries. I tried hard to get into consulting. I was trying to get into Bain and McKinsey, and it was just not happening. And the only consulting internship I got was at Accenture. And when I got that internship at Accenture, luck would have it that the client that I was assigned with was an investment bank in Toronto. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, I want to be like an investment banker, because it was so cool. I mean, and I come from like a lower middle class kind of family. So for me, I've never seen money and all that stuff. So when I saw that, I was like, oh man, I want that. And it was cool to me. So that's why I wanted to become one. And then when I got in, I was like, took as much as I can from it. And then I left. But yeah, the reason, I think another question to answer that is why did I do engineering in the first place? I think a lot of the issues with folks is that we get pretty bad guidance as early on. Like my family, we come from the military, so we don't know anything about business. And my mom's family comes from the art world, so there's no business in our background. So engineering just felt like and it just felt like the only thing the family knew you could do. And some of you may know and some may not, but in Indian culture or Pakistani cultures, it's either go an engineer or doctor or lawyer. So, and none of those things I was, ever passionate about. So if I could rewind time, I would definitely choose a business degree. Because one of my biggest regrets is I've gone to, undergrad for 4 years, and there's nothing that I remember from that undergrad, right? In terms of education and learning. I wish I could do a degree again where I could actually, take those 4 years of learning and use it in my career or something like that. What do resumes of new associates at MBB look like? So Ishan, for this one, I'd point you to my resume course. I also share my own personal resume in there, so you'll see exactly what a resume would look like. I share the template as well and all that stuff. So that's a 90-minute course. It'll help you build the best resume, and I stand by that. Shivan has a question. As technology vastly growing, how do you see the workforce being impacted in the future, especially with consulting jobs? So it's a good question, actually. So I think consulting jobs will remain because consulting industry is a lot more of a thinking industry, a lot more personalized advice industry. You become an expert in something. Like, for example, if your mom makes an amazing lasagna or she has this amazing dish she makes, only she can make it, right? So same thing with consulting. Once you get expertise in something, people will come and chase and get you to give us the advice in that sector. So when I worked at Morgan Stanley, for example, in San Francisco, some of the best managing directors were, sector-focused managing directors who they know everything about that one sector. So once you get to that level, clients will come and pay you a lot of money to give that advice. But I think there's some parts of this industry which I think will ultimately be automated and become commodities, right? For example, I think in the world of trading, when you're trading stocks and stuff, I think a big chunk of that part of the business will become automated. A big chunk of investment world will become automated. But investment banking won't become automated because investment banking is like the consulting world of the finance industry, right? Where you need specialized advice, you need specialized guidance, you need to block and tackle and really figure out how to package certain deals a certain way. And similarly, like investment banking, they do a lot of mergers and acquisitions, meaning selling companies and buying companies. So I have to convince some other company to be like, hey, you need to pay me $1 billion for this versus someone else. So there's a lot of human tactics that are going to be put into place, right? Like if you guys saw recently, TikTok was sold to, or US operation was partnered up with Oracle versus Microsoft. There's no algorithm that's just going to solve that, right? There's going to be human intervention that's going to be required. But look, I think these industries are great. I think, if you guys want to learn a lot in a very short period of time, I would highly recommend go join a Morgan Stanley or a McKinsey or one of these companies. But at the same time, I think one of the benefits you guys have that I didn't have, back when I graduated in 2009, the tech industry was non-existent in a way in terms of, what it offered and the learning experience and also the potential monetary compensation you would get. But these days, guys, you can make a lot more money and have a much better lifestyle if you go join an Airbnb or go join an Airbnb 5 years ago, right? So whatever the new Airbnb is, these days, go join that. Like there's companies like Clubhouse that I think are super awesome that are coming up. There's, new divisions at Snapchat that's cool. Like TikTok is pretty massive now, obviously, but there's always new tech companies that are coming in where you'll learn a lot, you'll wear a lot more hats, you'll get paid, and you'll have a better life because you'll be done work by 6, 7 p.m. and you'll get equity, which is a great thing, right? I remember when I was choosing between Google in 2013, in 2012 when I was in 2013, and then I was choosing between Google and this, recently IPO'd company called Facebook. I chose Google because it felt like the safer bet. But if I had chosen Facebook, I would have more money in my bank account than ever, right? In 2012, think about that, right? Back then, I think Facebook stock was at $21. I don't even know what Facebook stock is today. What is Facebook stock today? So Facebook is 272 today, right? So I could have made 10, 12 times my money. And usually when you join at that stage, you'll get a $300,000 package or something that multiply that by 10, that's $3 million, right? So you guys are in a potential avenue where there's so many amazing companies out there. So this is where the exploration phase is important. Go talk to people who are in those industries and don't discriminate against anybody because they're not a consultant or they're not at Google or they're not at a cool company, right? A lot of these small companies become big. So, and if you are good at it and you network well and you get the right opportunity at a small company, you could really crush it. All right, other questions, guys? You guys can ask me anything. You guys can ask me about salaries, lifestyle, whatever. I'm here for you guys.
I guess, Sherjan, we are kind of running out of time.
Okay.
We also kind of need to wrap up stuff. But thank you so much for coming today and talking to our members. And thank you all of you for also participating so actively. just like one thing like I really liked about your talk, you spoke about like the case in point book. I actually like kind of got aware of that book this sophomore year summer semester. So like, we plan to give that book case in point to all our members as a
Nice.
part of the club. So, like I really want to help them get their foot in the water and really start thinking about like how does the consulting industry and stuff work. So just like kind of like a concluding question I had was, all of them being like freshmen and sophomores right now, what like specific advice would you like to give them so that they can really like, start get going, and like, what do you think would be the best for them as like freshmen and sophomore if they're interested in the consulting field?
Yeah, I think, I guess like, what I would say is avoid herd mentality. You'll see a lot of go-getters who are going to be like McKinsey or death, right? Like it's do or die. No, I disagree with that. There's a lot of smart people that work at no-name consulting firms, right? Small consulting firms with 3 people, right? So I want you to have an open mind. Don't look at the person who gets 3 McKinsey internships in the next couple of years. Just figure out what is best for you, right? So that's going to take step by step, one piece at a time. Don't worry about if you got into McKinsey or not, or Goldman Sachs or not, right? It's going to take you a step-by-step process. Look at me, right? If you look at my overall career, my first job, like I said, was at a chicken restaurant. Then I was a security guard in sophomore year. Then I worked as an engineering internship at a nuclear plant. Then I worked at Accenture, didn't get a return offer. Then I joined Houlihan Lokey's investment bank, then Morgan Stanley, then Google, then Morgan Stanley, right? So it's a step-by-step process. And yes, there's going to be kids who get that, sexy job the first time around. But it's not going to be us. A lot of people are going to be like us. We're 99% of the game. So I think you just take it step by step, day by day, really try to explore and start meeting everybody. There's literally 100 consulting firms out there, and I don't think you can name more than 5. So find out what the other 95 are. Shoot a cold email to each one of their partners and say, hey, I just want to, get a Zoom chat with you. And guess what? Everybody at McKinsey is getting a cold email, right? But the person who's, at John and Smith consulting firm, whatever, is not getting a cold email. But he or she would be more than happy to tell you more about life and all that stuff and what it is like working there and things like that. And then you can learn from there, and hopefully it'll make you a better consultant in the future. So I guess that would be like, Tanish, my, parting comment. And I just have one more question. I think I just want to make sure I want to answer, because I feel bad if
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't answer it. So Zach asked, one quick question: how would you go about finding people to network with? So yeah, so I think like the best place to find people to network with is your alumni directory. So, as you get the, go get access to alumni directory. If you can't get access to it because you're still not a graduate, go find an alumni who would give you access, right? Like figure out someone, a friend of yours, his brother, sister, whoever, and, take them out to a McDonald's lunch and be like, dude, I need that password. Right? So get that access, and then start emailing people. That's the best place. The reason is, whoever you are, there's been literally thousands of people before you who've been in your shoes, right? So whatever problems you're facing, they've already faced, and they would understand you. So if you say, hey, my professor sucks, career center sucks, or whatever, they would totally understand it. So what I would recommend is go find them, get the access to that, and start emailing people from that. If you can't get access to the alumni directory, go to LinkedIn, set a filter for Indiana University, right? And the sector, if you want consulting or whatever, and find anybody who is, and don't worry about if they're 40 years older than you or just a year older than you, right? So just spread a wider net. Worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to not reply to your email. That's okay. That's just part of life, right? So, but the one person who does reply, great. Get as much as you can out of that.
Sherjan, do you mind if I share my screen for 2 or 3
Yeah,
minutes?
go
I
for
just
it.
have a
Go for it.
quick announcements to make for next meeting. All right, guys. So, as Sherjan mentioned, that case interview is going to be one of the big parts if you want to really go into the consulting industry. So our next meeting is going to be about like what is a case interview, how to succeed in it. And finally, we'll run through one sample case and really show you like how it feels to solve a case and, in a case interview setting. So that's our plan. And it's going to be on 22nd at 5 p.m. EST at the same time next week. And as you guys know that there are some leadership positions that open, and I think it's due on September 16th, 11:59 p.m. EST. So make sure you guys have your application if you want to be considered. And again, anyone can apply, everyone's eligible. So make sure you guys apply, and hopefully the results will come out probably by the Sunday of next week. So again, thank you so much everyone for stopping by today. And it was really great to have you, Sherjan, too. And thank you all for your participation. And anything else you want to conclude by
One thing I
saying?
just want to mention, those of you who want to stay connected, so sherjan.com is my website. So you guys can, there's every Monday I write an article about just mentorship and, tips to help you in your career. So you can sign up to that. And then all my other course links and stuff are there. And if you want to reach out to me, Twitter is the best way. I'm Sherjan on Twitter, and you can also add me on LinkedIn, Sherjan as well. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate you guys joining.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sherjan, for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, take care, guys.
Thanks so much.
Good evening.
Bye-bye.
Tanish, what's going on in, Tanish left. Shit. All right, team. See you guys. God, guy was in a rush.